You're listening to the Lakewood Vineyard Podcast. We are part of a family of neighborhood churches called the Mile High Vineyard. For more information about our church or those we are connected to, please go to lakewoodvineyard.org. Stay tuned at the end of our podcast for ways you can respond personally to what you've just heard.
Good morning, Lakewood Vineyard. Good to see you. I'm honored to get to speak today, our first sermon of the year. Super excited to be up here, and it's an honor. We have great speakers here, and to be able to have one of these weeks is just it's such an honor to speak God's word. But first and foremost, I want to start with I think like a good place to start, since it's the first time of the year, is just reviewing this past year. So first of all, we had a couple big things. We had the Olympics, and we had another presidential election. So, well, yeah, a bunch of fun things come with these. Also, personally, I had some big things. Hannah and I had our first little baby. So, yeah, little McElroy, yeah. That's been huge in a lot of different ways. I never thought that one smile could make up for a night of torment, but it does. I'm here to say it does. And then what also continued was our digital age, right? So nationally, what we don't typically look at, or maybe we don't take the time to look at because we don't want to, but nationally, people spent an average of 1,642 hours on their phone this year. 1,642 hours on their phone. Now, this isn't to say it's bad, good, whatever. It's just to say that this exists, right? Can we get the stats up there too? Yeah. So that's about 4.5 hours a day. Now, this doesn't... Yeah, I put that on the same slide. I should have... This isn't, and this does not go away from me as well. So personally, I was pretty embarrassed to realize that I've spent over 100 hours on YouTube sitting on the toilet. So I'm not out of this as well. And I mean, first, like, the secular age is the water we're swimming in, right? Like this, the pockets, it's what we're breathing is air. Not air, water. And those little pockets of air is like heaven on earth nowadays. And we'll be getting into that more and more throughout this year as we get into different series about the age we're living in. I just wanted to point this out because the simple fact of that what we do throughout our time is who we become. So my 100 hours on YouTube is creating me into somebody. It's having some sort of effect. And it's interesting because anybody ever heard of the phrase like trash in is trash out? Anybody? Yeah? I heard this ad nauseum when I was a kid, like often. And I was like, whatever. And it turned out like usually what my mom said was right. And it does have an impact. But I wonder, like, is fruit in, fruit out as well? To add some clarity to this, I was talking to my mom about this. I was telling her about some of the stats about phone usage, things like this. And it was so funny. She said, oh my gosh, I'm way above that average, but I don't use social media. I don't use social media, though, and I don't use YouTube, those things. I'm usually listening to an audiobook or a podcast. And guys, my mom is super intelligent. She is a superhero in so many regards. She's absolutely wonderful when it comes to getting something done, when it comes to loving those around her and being productive. But there was a problem. She said that her goal for this year is to be still, that she never feels the ability to be still. She can't just sit and be still. Now, this is somebody that's been a believer for her whole life. And she's concentrating on the good things. She's taking in fruit. Like, she's listening to good books. She's listening to good podcasts. She's listening to things about God, yet she can't be still. She said even watching a movie, she has to have her phone up, be doing something productive. So what's going on here, right? Why, if trash in is trash out, why is not fruit in, fruit out? What's happening? And so I just want you to be thinking today, how are the choices that you're making, how do they impact who you're becoming, right? Like phone usage, it might mean that you are gonna maybe lack trust and that you have to check up on people, right? Or you'll grow this need for control, that you constantly need to be on top of things, right? You need to control it. It needs to happen. It needs to be perfect. Maybe for me, what I've noticed in myself for YouTube is I've grown this greed for information. I need more and more and more. If I don't, then I'm getting behind, right? I'm not being effective or productive with my time, or I just need to be entertained. Entertain me while I'm sitting on the toilet, please. I'm also just an addict. I'm an addict for dopamine, and I need more of it. I need something there, and I've noticed my body, because I've been doing this process, this habit, I've actually become somebody that needs those things. So I want you to be thinking today, are we more shaped by the teacher of culture or by our rabbi, Jesus? Now, I'm a teacher myself, and I was inspired by a teacher I had in high school, Mr. Dixon. He really showed me what a good teacher was. So in high school, all I cared about was the effect, that I got a good grade, good enough to be out of trouble from my parents. So I'd cheat in all my classes. I didn't care what class it was. I mean, I loved stumping the teachers. They would try to check around the desks, right? Do all these things. It's like, I'm so much more clever than you. I can pass this test. But walking into Mr. Dixon's class, there was something a little different. Mr. Dixon would give a piece of paper, give the test, and then he'd walk out the room. He'd just leave. It's not like he did that normally during a normal day of school, but during a test, he'd leave. And I never cheated in his class. I never cheated. Now, notice, it wasn't about what was on the test, right? It wasn't the information that he was giving me, but it's how he was teaching. It was his approach. I don't remember a single thing that he tested me on, but I remember how he taught me, right? The movements of how he taught. See, good teachers focus on transformation, not transaction of information. They focus on who are you becoming and not what are you getting. And so far, based on what you've heard so far from who's speaking today, you're like, why are you up here if you're constantly on YouTube and you cheat constantly? Well, I'm in the same boat. I don't know why, and thank you, Jesus. And I think one thing's for sure, I've been a student of culture far longer than I've been a student of our Rabbi Jesus. I've been a student of our culture far longer. And I'm also coming to realize I'm a lot like Peter, when he confessed to Jesus that says, you're the Son of God, right? He's the first one that said, you're the Son of God. But then moments later, when Jesus says, all right, this is what that'll mean, me going to the cross, this means dying. Suffering probably means dying for Peter himself. He's like, no, I'm not going to let this happen. That can't be. What's happening there is I feel really similar to Peter, and I wonder if you do too, that you're like, yes, Jesus is Lord. Yet when it comes to the demands of how do you live your life, it seems so contrary and different that it can't be that way. You've been told these things from culture to produce more, your effect, while faithfulness is kind of second rate. So let's take a look at what Jesus, as a teacher, tells us about how to follow him. So I'll just be highlighting verses throughout Luke 6, if you want to open up to Luke 6, kind of going through. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to be reading every verse, but kind of highlighting parts here and there. First thing, so if we could go to Luke, this is great. Luke 6, so first thing to start out is Luke 6 starts with 1 through 11, where Jesus is redeeming Sabbath, okay? He's talking to the Pharisees about Sabbath. And the big thing that I want to note here is that, the Bible didn't just fall down from heaven, from the clouds, or we're not Islamic where, the God actually wrote this thing, right? Humans partnered with God, or God partnered with humans to write this. Right, this is an amazing thing. This is even more divine in my mind that he partnered with humans to write the scriptures. And, this is something that we can talk about more later in other teachings. But I think it's a big deal because the God working through humans shows us a really important thing of what to focus on when we come to Luke 6. In that Luke organizes this to start it off with Sabbath and concentrating and Jesus critiquing the Pharisees, saying, you're not doing this the right way. You're not doing this the right way. You're concentrating on what to do and what not to do. And Jesus says, who are you becoming because of this? Are you becoming more callous? Are you bringing life or are you bringing death? And all of this is really important. Like, we got to be thinking of Jesus. He's also 100% human as well as 100% God. So what he's saying, he's living and breathing as a human, and as a shirt, like love is a person. Like, he is a person. He's somebody to look at of what love is. So when he's telling the Pharisees not to concentrate on the what, but more so the how and who they're becoming, this being at the start of Luke is framing what we should look at going forward. So let's just go into Luke 6:12. Where we start off, and it says, one of those days, Jesus went to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. And this is the Sermon on the Plain. Keep this part in mind because we're going to be coming back to it. We're going to skip ahead to 20, but in between 12 and 20, it's just important to know that the kingdom is happening. Good things are happening. The apostles get chosen, and Gentiles and Jews alike are being healed. This is what most scholars call, yet again, the Sermon on the Plain, right? Opposed to the Sermon on the Mount. Most people think that this is at a different time, but uses lots of the similar teachings. Listen to how explicit Jesus is. Looking at his disciples, verse 20, he said, blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you will be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven. For that is how their ancestors treated the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have already received your comfort. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you will go hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when everyone speaks well of you, for that is how their ancestors treated the false prophets. Right off the bat, I'm thinking, what gives? Jesus, like, why do I not feel this? What gives? I don't feel blessed when I feel like I don't got enough money to do what we want to do. And certainly I don't feel like another translation for the word blessed is happy, like currently happy. So think about this. Does this actually vibe with your reality? In that, I mean, I know firsthand that when Hannah's hungry, it's not a happy sight, right? But, so I'm wondering what gives. Let's see if he clues us in a little bit more. Let's go to verse 24. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them as well. Please don't ask for this one. I really like it. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. You know, when we think about Genesis, creation, the fall, the broad narrative of what's happening in the Bible and what Jesus is doing here, I'm wondering, like, you know, because in Genesis 1 and 2, God says we're very good, right? When he creates the humans, it's very, very good. And I'm wondering, like, if he's redeeming us back to that and back to this relationship we had in the garden, then why do these things still feel so contrary? Why do this feel so contrary to how I live in life? Like, I know most of the time when somebody scorns me or insults me in some way, my first inclination is not to love them and pray for them. You know, I surely hope I'm the only one that feels that way in this room, but I have a feeling it's not that. That usually I'm doing that or praying for them because I should. I should do that, right? Like, my parents told me this, Jesus told me this, I should do this. It's my secular inclination. It's not actually who I am. Yet there are truly things since I've been following Jesus that he's been transforming me in. But most of the time, those things just happen automatically, and actually people have to point and say, you know what, thank you so much. You've been so generous. And I'm like, what? I didn't even notice, right? Because generally, when Jesus transforms you, you don't even notice these things that you do. But then when those opportunities happen to do what Jesus is saying, often I got to be honest, I'm doing it because I should, not because it's just like who I am, and I'm like, yes. Blessed am I who am poor, and so I'll just give you all I got, right? So we're going to go down to verse 36, where Jesus is really hammering out the point that he's talking about something beyond just good morals and ethics, right? If he's just talking about good morals and ethics, these things should be attainable to do. He's talking about something transformational, right? Verse 36, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Woo! That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Be as merciful as Yahweh God, perfect and all-loving, right? That bore all of our sins upon the cross and became sin and conquered death for our freedom and for our joy and relationship in him. That's going to be a tough one to do. It's going to be a tough one. And so what he's pointing to is something transformational and not something that just things to do. We got to be changed. I can't do this out of willpower. 39:40, he told them this parable. Can the blind lead the blind? Will they not both fall into a pit? The student is not above the teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like their teacher. This is good news. This is really good news. This condition we feel, this thing where it's like, this is really contrary to what life is, Jesus. It's expected. Jesus is fully aware of what reality is, guys. He is reality, okay? And he sees us in our condition, and he accepts us as students. That is, people who need to be educated in a certain direction, okay? I did a master's in curriculum and education, or curriculum and instruction, and the first book I read was one of the most impactful books I read. It's called Philosophy and Education by George Knight. The first few pages, mind blown when he separates out learning and education. Right, when we're thinking about Jesus, he's talking about a specific goal or becoming a certain type of person, that is Jesus, like our rabbi. Learning is broad. It's learning in general. Here, maybe this will make more sense when we go through the quote. Or this isn't up on the slide. So listen carefully. Education is distinct from the broader concept of learning, since education embodies the idea of deliberate control by the learner or someone else, i.e. our rabbi, toward a desired goal. Education might be thought of as directed learning as opposed to non-directed or inadvertent learning. So Jesus is the one we give deliberate control to. He's the one who directs our learning as disciples and who we are to become like. We're not just to say, thank you, Jesus, and move on and learn whatever. We are to position ourselves as the students and say, Rabbi, how do you want me to live? Who do you want me to become? This is important because it goes in a direct way. It's not willy-nilly and all over the place. Remember, good teachers, he is in the transformation business, not the transaction business. It's not what, the information that transforms. It's the who. So everything I'm saying up here, this is only helpful if it changes somehow how you approach life, how you approach the Lord. If you're just taking this as like, oh, yeah, cool, like that's a cool way to read this, and like locking it in as like this information stack of pile that you have, it's not going to be helpful, right? And then we go to verse 41 where he talks about, right, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye, right? First take out the plank in your own eye. He keeps on going into these things, and I want you to think what's required to actually accomplish it, right? To actually not judge somebody, to take the plank out of your own eye, you would have to stop for a second. Like think about when you judge somebody, when you're thinking about they should do it this way, that way, whatever. It takes a second. You can't just do it in the moment to take the plank out of your own eye. You actually have to have time separated out. He's pointing us to something. He's pointing us to a how and not the what. The what is the fruit that comes out of what occurs, right? He keeps going in 43 when he says, no good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. So this garden imagery immediately is pointing to the answer of how we do this, right? John 15:5, when Jesus says, if you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. This is really good news in a lot of ways. Like if you've for sure experienced good fruit in your life in some sort of way, this is Jesus. This is Jesus in your life. But it's also directing towards, like, how do we do these things? Well, it's abiding in the Father, right? Well, abiding in the vine that abides in the Father, but we can get into that later. This is the how that Jesus is talking about that produces the what, the good fruit. If you remember from the Fruits of the Spirit series that we talked about, we don't create the fruit, right? Like the Holy Spirit in us that we're incarnating into Jesus, becoming like Jesus, that's what produces fruit. And we are constantly, at least I do, I constantly look at other people's fruit, maybe on YouTube or other media, other good things, and I say, gosh, that would be awesome. I like that. That's good stuff. I'm pointing to it. And then when I show up to the moment to do those things, I'm trying to do it out of sheer willpower rather than actually who I am, right? In our rabbi, what we do is we miss out time with our rabbi, like I could be doing on the toilet. Okay, verse 45. Let's see if he gives us the answer of where this is coming from. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. If you guys are ever like, why are all these worship songs so emotional about the heart? Well, this is the heart of the matter. This is the heart of the matter, right? This is where it starts. Something is up with us. Something is off. So what do we do if our hearts are corrupted? Right? If we have evil coming out of our hearts, if we aren't doing the things, if we're just doing it for the should. Yet again, it's who we spend it with that changes how we live. It's an odd thing that the easiest thing that we were created to do, right? We're created to live the way that Jesus is talking, yet it sometimes feels like the hardest thing we could possibly do. It's very weird that in this experience that it's flipped. Right? Shouldn't it be super easy to do the things that we were created to do, to love? It should be really easy if we're created to be that way, but it's not that way. Let's listen to somebody who's spent a lot of time with the Lord, Thomas Merton, a Trappist monk, who says, this is one of the chief contradictions that sin has brought into our souls. We have to do violence to ourselves to keep from laboring uselessly for what is bitter and without joy. And we have to compel ourselves to take what is easy and full of happiness as though it were against our interest, because for us the line of least resistance leads in the way of greatest hardship. And sometimes for us to do what is in itself most easy can be the hardest thing in the world. We need change. We can't do this out of willpower. 46. Jesus says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them in practice, I will show you what they are like. I will show you what they're like. Remember, he's a guy talking to a bunch of people, and he's like, if you want to know how this happens, look at me. I'm going to show you. Look at how I walk and how I live my life, and I will show you how this occurs. So we should be looking at Jesus as our how-to in life. We should be looking at his life to organize and prioritize what we care about and what we spend our time doing. Then remember, he finishes this off on 48, talking about how this is the strong foundation, looking to how he does it, and then puts it into practice. Right? When things happen, the unexpected happens in life, what's going to hold you is looking to how Jesus does it and doing it in the same way. So how does Jesus do it? Well, let's look at how this started, right? Luke 6:12. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. He spent the night praying to God before this whole teaching. This is him showing how he lives, how he does it. I don't know about you, but I haven't spent a whole night praying, unless guess the only times I have has been like the most painful times of my life. It hasn't been like a happy time. I've needed to do it out of necessity. It hasn't been like a regular practice. But this is how he starts it. I'd say he organizes his life around this very thing, is abiding in the Father, when he talks about that this is where this comes from. This is where fruit comes from, where good fruit comes from. So you might be wondering, how do we do this though, right? We're not 100% God. And plus, we have a completely different lives than Jesus. We're not living in the Greco-Roman period where we got cars, we got cell phones. Things are completely different. All of us have different jobs. How do we do this? How do we organize our life this way? Well, I recommend something called a rule of life. So rather than a New Year's resolution this year, I'd encourage you to look into a rule of life. So rather than the thing that gets failed maybe 3 weeks in, let's look into a practice that the church has been practicing for about 2,000 years now. It's something called a rule of life, organizing our life in a way to spend as much time as we can abiding in the Father. So when I say way of life, that's the same thing as rule of life, right? When we're talking about the way Jesus lives, this is what we need is a rule of life. They're synonyms. So when I say way, you say rule. Way. Way. Rule. Way. Rule. I wanted to do it again because it's fun. Okay. They were used interchangeably until the church adopted Latin as the primary language, and St. Benedict just consistently used rule of life. And so that's why we use the word rule. So don't be thinking like legalistic thing that if you cross, you get punished or something. It's the way you live a life. So what is a rule of life? We'll put it in a few different ways, but first of all, let's think about it in like an analogy. Marriage as an example of a rule of life with God. So at a wedding, Dietrich Bonhoeffer once gave, this is a 20th century theologian, that gave advice at this wedding to this young couple. He said, "Today you are young and very much in love, and you think that your love can sustain your marriage. Well, it can't. Let your marriage sustain your love." If you're married, you know exactly what we're talking about, right? Like the flame exists. It's there. But it comes and goes. What holds you together is the covenant or a structure of saying, I'm going to show up. And that's what holds that fire together. So when we consider the fire of our relationship with the Lord, I would say prayer. Let's look at what Ronald Rolheiser writes about prayer. Too commonly, we accept the following sets of axioms as wise. Creativity and variety are always good. That every prayer celebration should be one of high energy, right? Longer is better than shorter. Either you pray with feeling or you shouldn't pray at all. Ritual is meaningless unless we are emotionally invested into it. These are the lies that we've been told, like that it's not worth going to pray with God unless you are all in, that you're feeling all the emotions, that you're feeling the heat of the Holy Spirit, right? These are the lies that we've been told. Let's let our marriage sustain our love. Each of these axioms is overly romantic, ill thought out, anthropologically naive, and unhelpful in sustaining a life of prayer. Prayer is a relationship, a long-term one, and lives by those rules. Relating to anyone long-term has its ups and downs. Nobody can be interesting all the time, sustain high energy all the time, or fully invest himself or herself all the time. Never travel with anyone who expects you to be interesting, lively, and emotionally invested all the time. Real life doesn't work that way. I remember when one of Hannah and I's first trips together, I expected this of her, and I was very much let down, and she was okay not acting like that she can be lively all the time. I was like, what the heck, do you not love me? What's going on here? Right? And she's like, I don't have the energy for you. Preach. Yeah. What sustains a relationship long-term is ritual, routine, a regular rhythm that incarnates the commitment. All right, like you say yes. Well, now, what does that look like in your life? How are you living your life? How are you living that yes? Okay, let's think about a rule of life like more of a symbolic way. Let's think about it as a trellis, right? The thing that holds up a vine that gives it structure. Trellises can look very different from each other. And also, by the way, things grow, right, without a trellis. It's not like you walk around and you see trellises everywhere. You see things growing, but they can be growing in completely random, disordered ways that aren't as pretty. And believe me, they're still pretty in some way, right? God still meets you in those situations. However, to take form, it needs a trellis. Now notice that all four of these are different from each other, right? But there's something, what's similar between the four? Boom, structure. And they're beautiful. This is a lot like the image of Jesus. See, we're all going to look different, but what's similar is that there's structure, there's a way of living that's the same, and the image is beautiful. We will be like, remember Luke 39:40, right? We will be like our teacher. This is the form we take. I love the bridal one, right? Because it brings images that the church is the bride of Christ, right? Okay, for you type 1s or type A's that just want a straight definition, here's your straight definition for a rule of life. A rule of life, very simply, is an intentional, conscious plan to keep God at the center of everything we do. That's what it is. So, making a game plan. How do I keep God at the center of what I do? How do I do that? And we see this throughout, if we go back, right? Like Acts indicates the apostles are following Jewish law of praying 3 times daily. Jesus goes off in solitude consistently throughout. Symbolism is integral to the life, whether Jew or Gentile, right? Like think about in the Greco-Roman period, like everybody is worshiping some deity, and symbolism is really important. What you put your mind to, is filling your time of how you're living, what you're looking at, it's really important, and it's forming who you're becoming. All right. Let's land this ship on really what we're getting to, which is, what's your current rule? What's your current rule of life? Because it's not whether if you have one, it's what is it, right? Because we all have practices that we do day in, day out. Whether that's spending time with the Lord and a day off, and separating a whole day, or sitting on YouTube for 100 hours a year. So let's go through this together. Just kind of be thinking of this. You'll have an opportunity to fill out one and make one for yourself next. But just to spur some thoughts, what is something you do daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly? What do you do? Do you take a vacation with your family yearly? Right, that's a rule. It's a thing that you're doing consistently to form a certain family, right? What do you do to relax, unwind during leisure time? What do you do? What's your autopilot that you're like, I'm going to do this, right? And then how do you do those things? Because you can watch a movie like my mom while, answering emails, or you can immerse yourself, or in a movie. You can approach things in a different way. And then, the most important part of this is the things that you're doing day in, day out, are they making you people of agape love? Self-giving, self-sacrificing love, the love of Jesus. Do they make you more or less anxious? Right? I know me spending so much time on YouTube has made me more anxious, and that when there's a moment that's free, I want to fill it with something. I need something. Right? This has created something. All right, let's go to an example. So the next slide. Some examples of what a rule of life could look like. I put this in a table. I'm using St. Benedict's practices, plus I added family and technology, because I think those are really important to our church and our context. If you want to, while I'm just going through these examples, there's a QR code right here, and it's a rule of life builder from Practicing the Way. The sign-in's real quick. You got to create an account real quickly, but I promise they're not going to annoy you with emails and things. It's good stuff, and they can help you go through this. But this is what this could look like, right? Separate your life into categories. What do you do daily or weekly for prayer? What do you do for work consistently to work as we're supposed to in the kingdom? Right? For work, for me, a big one is to check personal budget once a week. That impacts my work, of how I'm working. Am I concerned about finances and things, or am I being a good steward over what we have? Am I on top of that? Because I know I'll be anxious. If I don't look at that, right, I'll be stressed out. Guys, all this is spiritual is the thing. We seem to think that this is separated somehow, but our practices day in, day out are making us into people. It's spiritual. Maybe it's something as simple as for community, you're lingering around at church. For family, you have a set-apart date night. Ooh, technology, this is a good one because we included it in the hook. Parent your phone each night, right? It goes to bed before you. It wakes up after you. It's one that you could put in. All right, worship team, if you guys want to come on up. Now, I know when I think about if I heard this message while I was in high school or maybe college before I was following Jesus, I would think the rule of life, this just sounds like chains. Did I just step into like a Catholic church right now that are dressed like Coloradoans? What's going on right now? That's what I would think. But like I really want to be clear that a rule of life is to free you, not chain you. A rule of life is to free you and not chain you. When we're talking about the secular world being the water we swim in, this is the pocket of air, the air that we breathe. It's the freedom. So there's two groups that when I was praying about this kind of would resonate with or you're thinking a couple things. First, there's those of you that hear this as legalistic Christianese, more of that stuff. And you've been burned by behavior modification or other false gospels of like, try harder, do this, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You got this, boy, right? That kind of stuff. This is not that. It's the opposite. You can't do it. Your willpower cannot do it. Give up. Jesus is your only way. This is how we live, how we were created to be. Like Dallas Willard said, our walk with Christ, so our rule or way of living with him, well learned, is a burden only as wings are to a bird or engines are to an airplane. Right? Will it take work? Do birds work with their... Yes, they work while they're flying, right? But it's what makes them fly. This is not something that weighs us down. The yoke of Jesus is light. His burden is easy. And if you're thinking, I can't do that, I saw all your examples, I saw the rule of life, organizing these things, this is too much. Or maybe because you've been burned by the church or you've tried these things and you haven't felt the Holy Spirit, you haven't felt God change your life. I encourage, courage is what's needed, right? To step out, go into the unknown. I'm going to let Madeline Langle help us here, who wrote like Wrinkle in Time. She said, we have to be braver than we think we can be because God is constantly calling us to be more than we are, to see through plastic sham, to living, breathing reality, and to break down our defenses of self-protection in order to be free to receive and give love. So I wonder if your resistance to this, if you feel any resistance, is more about insecurity, right? More about kind of scared to give up the way you live your life than it is anything about wrong about the church or about Jesus' teaching. And by the way, the system you have in place is perfectly set up for the results you're getting. Right? If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling stressed, look at how you're living your life. What are you doing? How are you living your life? How are you approaching it? It's not an easy thing, right? It's not an easy thing. Okay, there's also a second group that hasn't really experienced the love of Jesus before. And you might just be done with the way the world lives. This line of questions was inspired while I was praying through this by the great theologian John Foreman, singer of Switchfoot, in his song Thrive. So remember, John 10:10, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come, as in Jesus, that they may have life and have it to the full. So this line of questions. First of all, a warm body doesn't mean I'm alive. So You're not alive. Merely just having your body and being around doesn't mean that you're alive. There's something more, and this is good news. This is really good news. If you feel like this is it, there's good news that Jesus has abundance and a life that is full. If you say, I'm not all right, are you ready to admit and confess that, you know what, I can't do this by my willpower. I can't be the perfect person. I can't just do all the right things. Are you ready to say, I can't do it, I give up? Or here's one right here. This one really resonated in that. Do you ever feel like you travel but you never arrive? Are you similar to my mom in that you're all constantly doing the things to try to get something done? Get to the next thing, but you're never actually home? You're not actually there? Or do you feel like you're in between a machine and a man who looks something like you or a woman that looks like you? Do you feel like you're constantly working and being productive, and then when you look in the mirror, you just feel like you look like somebody that's supposed to be you, that you're not actually in the skin, you're not being the person you were created to be? You ever feel like that? Do you want to thrive and not just survive? Because that's what our culture is saying. Like, you can go to the teacher of culture and survive. Survival of the fittest, right? You can be the most productive that you can be, do the things in the most effective way that you can. That is a way. But if you're ready to ditch that way, if you're ready to say, this has not produced any fruit in my life, I am not a person that brings a non-anxious presence into a room, or I do not know what love feels like. I don't know what that feels like. Well, there's good news. In Jesus is a life of thriving. It's life to the full. And if you've heard God singing to you before and said, I hear you, you hear him, or there's a tug on your heart, well, this is an opportunity. There's already a set apart time and place right here, right now, to be with the Lord. So I encourage you to come up for prayer if either of these things resonate with you. If you feel like you're constantly running the rat race and you're never getting there, never arriving, there's good news. Jesus is your home. Jesus is your home. And then the other group, if you're done with secularism, right? You're done with behavior modification, and you're ready for Jesus to change your life, then come up here. If you need help or want wisdom for discernment, for maybe you know what not to do, but you don't know what to do, then come on up and receive prayer.
Thanks for listening to the Lakewood Vineyard podcast. We encourage you to respond to what you've just heard by sharing a prayer request with us on our Connect card. You can find these on our app or our website at lakewoodvineyard.org/connect. You can also respond by being generous as God has been generous to you. If you'd like to give a financial gift, you can do so at lakewoodvineyard.org/give. We hope to hear from you soon. Thanks for listening.